Hi you two. This week we're still going to be talking about our lovely new friend Claude Monet, and we're going to be talking about something else he did with his painting style. So last week we talked a lot about how he uses mostly cool colors in his artwork, and we talked about that technique called stippling. S-T-I-P-P-L-I-N-G, stippling. And does anyone remember what stippling was? I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about it. I'm not frozen. I'm just giving you some thinking time. Thinking time. What was stippling? Any ideas? Have we forgotten? Oh, okay. So, stippling was when he used his paintbrush to do those little dab marks, remember? So we can do that with our pencils, we can do it with textures, and you can do it with paint as well. So you just get your brush or your pencil or your texture and just do little, basically like little dots, and we do lots close together so that it looks like the artwork has texture, like we can feel it. The other thing that Claude Monet did lots of was in his paintings of nature, he did this thing called a wash. Okay, and I promise it's not like washing the dishes or washing the laundry, washing clothes. So when we talk about doing a wash, it's when we do something in the background. So it would be the first thing we do in our painting, and then we would put layers over the top of it. So a wash is actually a very, very thin layer of very, very light color. Very light color, okay? So if we were doing this at school, we would use watercolor paints, and instead of doing 10 swirls in our watercolor paints like we would normally do, we might only do 3 or 4, and we would add extra water than normal so that the color is very light and very see-through. So think about what the difference is when you wipe your paintbrush on the pot first and then swirl, and how dark and bright that color is when you do your 10 swirls in the watercolor paints. And then think about what it's like when we do straight in, no wiping the brush, no getting the extra water off, and maybe only doing 3 or 4 swirls. It's much, much lighter and more see-through. So he would paint his whole page like that, and that's called doing a wash. So we usually use it for a background, and we wash the color. So it gives you a nice starting point, and then you can layer more interesting things over the top. So today we're going to try and do a wash on our own, and you can do this using crayons or colored pencils, or if you're very lucky and you've got paint at home, you can do it with that. But we want it to be very, very light and very thin layer that covers our whole page. So today I'm only going to do this with a small piece of paper. So I'm actually only going to use an A5 piece of paper, which for those of you who remember is half of an A4. So it's very small because I'm going to color the whole background, and that's going to take some time. So if you've only got an A4 piece of paper at home, you can do it with the A4, no worries. Or you can do what I'm going to do and chop an A4 in half. I'm going to show you how. So grab your drawing things, colored pencils, crayons, whatever you've got, paint if you're lucky, and a piece of paper, and meet me back here. Okay, so like I said, I'm starting with an A4 piece of paper, and I've decided for this artwork today, for me, this is actually going to be a little bit too big. So I want to make this an A5 piece of paper. You can keep yours as A4, which is the normal size that we use for printing and all those sorts of things, which is what you've probably got at home. Or you can try and do what I'm about to do, which is turn it into an A5, which is actually really, really easy. So like I said, A4 is half, A5 is half of A4. So if I fold this in half very carefully and make sure my corners match up as best I can, I'm going to do a nice sharp fold there, and then you can see I've got a line here. So half of this is actually A5. Now you can just fold it in half like that, or you can cut it, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cut this bit off And then I've got another A5 piece of paper, which I can use for something else, another artwork, or I can stick it in my scrap paper box for something else. So now I've got my A5 artwork, A5 piece of paper. I decided to do it a bit smaller today because I'm going to do that really light wash over the whole background, and an A4 piece of paper is really big to do that, but you can have a go if you like. I picked today some cool colors to do this. So because I'm so inspired by Claude Monet, which is what we're doing at the moment, we're being inspired by another artist, Claude Monet. So I'm going to continue with that, and I'm going to use cool colors today. So I've got dark green, purple, light blue, and light green. And I'm going to do very, 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 very light coloring all across the whole page for my wash, for my background. Like I said, if you were doing this with paint, you would use a little bit more water. And for me, I'm just going to make sure that I don't press really hard. So I'm going to be very light with my hand and shade the whole thing very carefully. If you were doing it with crayons, you'd do the same thing. You would try and be very, very light with your hands. I'm also going to use these 4 colors for the whole background, and I'm actually going to blend them together a little bit. So let's get started. So very lightly, see, I'm being super, super light. I'm just adding all this color right to the edge of my page and making a wash in the background. And because I want to use all of these colors for this artwork, I'm actually going to try and blend them together a little bit. And that means that in some spots, I'm going to layer them. So I'm going to have one on top of the other. And because I'm doing it so light, very, very light, taking my time, they blend together really nicely. Look at that. This is a beautiful wash already. I'm going to do the blue down the bottom because I think that I'm going to try and do the water garden with some lilies in it. A little bit of purple, because why not? And remember, this is only going to be my background. I'm going to add other things to this and layer it and add more stuff. And I'm going to use some paper and I'm going to use some drawing to do that. You know what else I think I need? I think I need my dark blue pencil too. There we go. Ooh, this one's quite dark. It's probably a little bit darker than I want, but that's okay. Got to be very light with my hand. Super, 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 super light. And I'm just going to use a little bit of that because it's way darker than I thought. And I'm going to put my light blue over the top. There we go. And that will be my wash for the background. So like I said, I'm doing it super light and filling the whole background, every little bit of it right to the edges. And that is my wash for my background. Very nice. Now, like I said, for this artwork, I am going to try and make the Japanese garden. And the most important feature to that, I think, is that beautiful little Japanese bridge. So I've got a black piece of paper and I'm going to do the bridge with some collage. But you can just draw if you would like to. So I'm going to just make sure that this is the right length for me so that I don't make my bridge too big to fit. And then the same thing we do when we do any collage. You draw it first and then you cut it out. So I'm going to draw the Japanese bridge. And I like that little wooden bridge. And I think this is going to look awesome on my wash background. Little bridge. Got to try and make it even. And then I'm going to cut it out. Easy peasy. Like I said, if you don't have any colored paper at home or anything like that, don't stress. You can just draw. And in a second, I'm going to show you how to do that too. And you know what? I'm going to be a little bit fancy today. And I'm actually going to fold it in half to try and make sure it's even. So this is kind of like how we made the lilies last week. I've just realized. What a connection. And then I'm going to cut some little bits out. And this is going to be my beautiful, hopefully, Japanese bridge. You've got to be very careful when you're cutting things like this. You've got to take your time and be patient. Otherwise things don't work out. But hey, you know, sometimes things just don't work out when we're in art and we're trying new things. Sometimes things don't go to plan, and so not everything is perfect, and that is a-okay. We don't need to stress about things like that as long as we are having a go and we are having fun, then that is what matters. One more little bit, I think, and then I'll have a nice little bridge. There we go. Hey, that's my little Japanese bridge. So I'm going to grab my glue stick. I'm going to glue it down. I'm going to put it pretty high because it's going to go over my water. And I'm just going to get a little bit more of my black paper. And I'm going to put some bits at the end as well. I think I'll make it a bit skinnier. It helps to draw these things first, definitely. My glue stick, glue stick, glue stick, glue stick. So I've got my wash for the background and I've got my little collage Japanese bridge, which I'm really happy with. But I'm going to add some more detail to this. So like I said, if you don't have colored paper at home, don't stress. You can just draw straight over the top of the wash. That's one of the good things about coloring the background so lightly like this, is that you can just draw straight over the top. So now in the watery part, the blue section, I'm going to draw some lily pads and some lilies. I like using the wash for the background because it means that the drawings that I do really stand out, but the background's just a little bit more interesting than if I had done it blank. One more little lily pad leaf, and then I'm going to draw some lilies. So you can do this with texture, or you can do it with paper, or you can do it with colored pencil, up to you and whatever you have at home. So just do your best. Use what you've got. Sometimes we just got to use what we've got, even if it's not what we want. You got to use what you have. That's what I'm doing at the moment, just using what I've got at home, because I don't have all the paints and things like that we've got at school here either. A little bit of yellow to make it more interesting. And you know what? I need some dark pink too. Lovely. And you know what? And even for good luck, I'm going to get my pencils and I'm going to draw some leaves like a tree hanging over, just like that picture we saw in The Magical Garden of Claude Monet, that book that we shared at the start. Ooh, that was a bit of a flip. And some on the other side too. And then I'm going to very lightly color it in. So see, even with pencil, I can go over the top of my wash and still have that beautiful, really light background, but also be able to draw more interesting things over the top to make my artwork. So I've got a wash in the background, I've got a little bit of collage to show you how to do that if you want to, and I've got some drawing with texture and with pencil. Love it! Beautiful water garden, beautiful little Japanese fridge, and all my lovely lilies on top of my beautiful washed background, very light color. Alright, I hope you enjoyed making this artwork and doing a wash for your background, and then layering some things on top of it using collage to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more exciting. I can't wait to see what you make. Email me if you've got any questions or you're not sure or you just miss me. I like hearing from you. Okay, goodbye.